And welcome back to another episode of Cafe Lily, with your hosts, Rosa and Kels. Kels and Rosa.
Thank you, Rosa. It's good to be here. And would you look at that? We have another customer this week.
It's me. I'm a guest.
Wow.
It's Erika. Hi.
Hello, welcome, Erika.
From Hard Catch Pretty Cure?
From Pretty Cure.
Erika from Pretty Cure, we have someone so famous in the cafe.
Yeah. I love when you turn into a dog for some reason.
That happens a lot. It happens this year, too.
Well, Erika, welcome to Cafe Lily. You wouldn't, by any chance, know anything about Yuri, would you?
I do know a little bit about Yuri, but I don't know if you want to hear my secrets.
No, we do. We definitely do.
Yeah, that's why we're here. That's why this cafe's here. For Yuri.
Oh, is it? I just came in here for the snacks. Alright then, alright. You hear anything about Liz and the Bluebird?
Raise my arms up like I'm Tim Buckley's character.
But just in case there's anyone out there who hasn't heard about this, would you like to explain what it is?
Yes. So, Liz and the Bluebird is a 2018 animated film, and it's a spin-off of the anime Sound Euphonium, which is by the studio Kyoto Animation. And now it's a spin-off film, and it's about two of the characters who did basically jack all in Sound Euphonium, and they get their own Yuri subplot, which is filled with, tension and suspense, and two girls not really talking to each other.
That sounds like the makings of an excellent Yuri.
Bad communications.
It's what girls live for. So I guess I could start off by talking a little bit about Sound Euphonium, since that's a little relevant, and it probably won't be on Cafe Lily otherwise, because it's not really a Yuri. It's about Kumiko, who's a euphonium player, and after she fails the competition in middle school, she reluctantly joins the band in high school, because there's a new band teacher who's trying to shape everyone up. And coincidentally, her, rival, I guess, rival/scary friend, Reina, the trumpet player, also joins the band. And there are a lot of very homoerotic shenanigans between the two of them.
Oh, yeah, but it's not Yuri.
But it's not Yuri. It's very advanced bait, is what I would call it.
Uh-huh.
But apparently, I just learned this recently, the author of Bloom Into You really loves Sound Euphonium. And she was like, this is the gold standard for all Yuri. This is what I was trying to emulate. And it's like, Sound Euphonium. Sound Euphonium. Really?
No, that tracks.
It's less about the intention and more about the impact.
Exactly. Sound Euphonium was kind of insane for Yuri development. Not many people realize it, but I think it was. In season 2, they introduced a side character named Mizore, and she's an oboe player. And in the band, she's very lonely. She doesn't have any friends. She's kind of off by herself. And the one person who she considers her best friend is Nozomi, who plays flute. But Nozomi quit the band in the first year because there was a schism between the first years and the third years. And it's a bunch of band politics because that's basically half the show. And so Mizore is kind of dejected and upset by it, but she can't really let it out because she doesn't have any friends. So long story short, they get Nozomi back in the band. They have a reunion. They're like, okay, we're besties now. And we're gonna play in the band. I'm not going to leave you. And Mizore is like, okay, I can buy that. I can buy this unhealthy codependent relationship. And that's basically where Liz and the Bluebird starts. You don't really need to see Sound Euphonium to get the gist of that, because it's all explained in the first scene. Liz and the Bluebird is designed to be something you can watch by itself. So you don't really need the context of Sound Euphonia, and honestly, I would recommend you don't watch it. So Liz and the Bluebird was directed by Naoko Yamada, and she also did A Silent Voice. She did like a few other things. She did the K-On! Movie. She's basically like, she sees Mizore and Nozomi, and she's like, okay, these are my Blorbos now.
Yeah.
I need to take them out of this anime and put them in a better anime. I'm putting you in an actual goddamn Yuri.
Now, wait a minute. It was said during the interview, oh, it wasn't intentionally gay, but it's wonderful that people have seen it that way.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't really speak for her. I don't know what her intent was when she was like writing it or whatever. But like, this is so like intimate and personal.
Yeah, it's really prominent, even just from the opening scenes. It's like, oh my god, this girl is in love with her friend.
Yeah, it's like she's waiting for her at the door.
Yeah, even down to like the music, the fact that the music goes at the tempo of Nozomi's footsteps and Mizore's are out of sync with Nozomi's. That's something that has always really stuck out to me. The music in this movie, obviously, is a big focus of it.
So, something that people might be wondering if they're not familiar with this movie is, if this is about two high school girls, how do Liz and the Bluebird come into play?
Alright, yes. So, in parallel with the main story, which is about Mizore and Nozomi, there's also a storybook story that is in universe, like the basis of a performance piece that they're playing for a concert. And in that story, it's like a fictional little German fairy tale where Liz, the young girl who lives on her own and is lonely all the time, meets a mysterious girl one day who just shows up out of nowhere. And they kind of become besties instantly. They start living together, they do everything together. Until one day it turns out that Liz discovers the girl is actually a bluebird, surprise, surprise, who turned into a human so she could stay with Liz. And because she's not a human, she's a bluebird, she has to fly away and leave Liz alone again. And that's something where Mizore kind of sees that and she's like, oh shit, that's us. Well, Mizore, she sees herself as Liz, and she sees Nozomi as the bluebird, because Nozomi was just like the only person to ever come up to Mizore and be her friend and convince her to play in the school band. So Mizore knows that Nozomi is going to have to leave her eventually, and she's like, oh, damn it, I'm gonna be alone again.
Aww.
And she already has abandonment issues because Nozomi is so flippant about leaving and joining the band again. And she isn't really serious about becoming a professional, musician like Mizore is. And that's another divide between them. Mizore is like, music is her life. And Nozomi is like, well, music is just something I do for fun. It's a big disjoint between them. And that's a big key word. Like, from the opening scene, it is pretty apparent. Mizore is always trailing behind Nozomi. And there's, like, literally shots, like, that keep focusing on the sway of her hair, the way her feet drag behind her, the swaying of her skirt. It's such a, like, romantic kind of, like, framing of it. I think they've even said that in interviews. Like, they wanted to have, like, a romantic kind of, framing to the shots when they're focusing on Mizore trailing behind Nozomi. So that's the opening scene. And then they establish, the piece they're playing, the storybook. And then everyone else comes in. You have the brand president, the trumpeter Yuko, and then you have the co-president, also a euphoniumist named Natsuki. Then you have all of all of Nozomi's friends from the wood section. And then you also have Mizore's, other reed players who play the double reeds. And one of them is also an oboe player. She's the only other oboe player in the band. Her name is Erika.
Oh, we love Erika.
Erika! Hi, Erika!
She's autistic. I have to say that outright.
It's true.
She's like, she has a very soft voice. She's always wearing this big old sweater. She has like pink hair.
And pronouns?
And pronouns. And she's always trying to get Mizore's attention. She even keeps mixing up her last name with Mizore's, which is kind of funny. So Ririka is always trying to get Mizore's attention, but Mizore is only focused on Mizore is only focused on Nozomi. So she doesn't really, pay attention to Ririka.
Oh, she just wants to be besties with her senpai so badly.
Yes, she really wants to be besties with Mizore.
Yeah.
So they're, the double readers, Ririka and her friends, they're really upset that Mizore isn't really reciprocating their attention. And meanwhile, Mizore is just like, she has the Liz and the Bluebird book, and she's like, I'm gonna spend my entire day reading this. And she's like, I don't want this to happen to me, but I also want to know exactly how it's going to happen. So we keep seeing the Liz and the Bluebird story, and we keep seeing how Liz and the Bluebird live together, and how it changes their lives. So you get Liz, who finally has someone who is a friend, and you have the Bluebird, who's happy to be with Liz, but she also feels like a sense of longing, that she knows that she's really a bird, and she can't, keep pretending to be a human. And Liz starts to pick up on that, and then it goes back to the main story, where Mizore and Nozomi are kind of beginning to drift apart a little bit. Mizore has her woodwind teacher, Miss Niyama, and she's kind of noticing that, hey, Mizore, you're pretty good at oboe. Do you want to go professional? You could go to a music college and play in like an actual orchestra. And she's like, I'll consider it, but... And then she meets Nozomi in the hallway, and she's like, Miss Niyama gave me this packet, and Nozomi's like, oh, this is a music college. And she's like, maybe I'll go too. And Mizore is like, then I'll go with you. And suddenly it's like, oh, Mizore is only going to music college. She's only playing in the band because of Nozomi, because she wants to be with Nozomi. And that starts to kind of, drive a rift between their friends, because they kind of see Yuko and Natsuki. They're like, hey, Mizore is only doing this because of you. And there's a lot of little things that keep coming up between them, like the love you hug.
Oh my god, that was so sad. She left her hanging.
How could she?
Yeah. They're talking about like a tradition in some school where one girl hugs another and says everything she loves about her, and then the other girl reciprocates. And Nozomi knows all about it. Mizore knows nothing about it. Nozomi is like, then why don't you hug me? And she opens her arms, and Mizore is about to go in for it. Nozomi is like, just kidding.
That's cruel. Don't do this to her.
It's like, oh my god. She looks like those wet cats.
The I love you hug was so funny to me because there was a very similar tradition at my middle school. It was like you're supposed to close your eyes, and then your friend stands behind you and whispers into your ear something that they like about you, and then like they turn you around and you swap places. It was like, I have no idea where that came from, but I was like, oh yeah.
This movie has like such a intimate understanding of like how high school culture works. Like, it's not something you see often in like anime, because it's always like, they're getting like the ideal cartoon version of it or whatever. But this one you have, you have cliques, you have gossip, you have, people unintentionally insulting each other, you have traditions from schools, that kind of thing. It's really interesting to me. Like I said, it feels very like personal, like
Yeah.
they were documenting something that like really happened or something.
And like, it's even with the style too. Just looking closely at it, it's just like it's drastically different. There's a bit of like more, how they say, less stylized and more, a bit more grounded. And on top of that, a lot more somber looking.
Yeah, it's very like washed out.
Yeah, and it all takes place within the school, which like it never changes from that setting.
Besides the Liz story, which also has a different art style.
Yeah, I would say kind of Ghibli-esque.
It reminds me a lot of
Like,
Kiki's Delivery Service. And it's very different from Sound Euphonium. It's a Sound Euphonium has a very like house style for KyoAni. Like if you've seen Harui or K-On, it's basically the same art style as that, just a little more detailed. This one, it's definitely more grounded. It's a lot more desaturated and like in the real world, it's very realistically painted. And not just that, but also sometimes there's like abstract sequences, like just done entirely with watercolors. There's this technique called, I have no idea how to pronounce it, but basically what they do is they like splatter paint and then they fold the paper in half and then they unfold it and you get like a mirror image that's like almost, but not exactly the same. So you have two halves and they're not quite identical. And that's quite fitting for the situation we're talking about here. Two girls who aren't exactly equals, but they're still together. And they even did that with the music in a few of the sequences. What they did was they splattered paint over sheet music and then folded it in half. And what you got was essentially sheet music that has a repeating pattern, but it changes a little bit slightly over time. So you can hear that in a lot of the music for some of the ambient sequences.
Huh, that's interesting.
It's like barely music at all. It's very interesting to me.
There are a lot of character design details as well that I love in this movie. Like every time you send a picture of Mizore as she looks in Sound Euphonium, I'm just like, no, she's not Mizore without all her stray hairs. Like,
Right.
don't show me this.
It's like so distinct and it feels very integral. It's like it feels like a sense of subtlety, unlike the messiness of like her own inner thoughts, her situation.
Her jumbled thoughts kind of translate into how messy her hair is. Also, like her like wispy eyebrows. Like she has very thin eyebrows compared to every other character in the movie.
Yeah, she's like not a very expressive person too.
Mm-hmm. She's so pensive, and yet you can get so many emotions just from how she looks. A lot of this movie is like based on what the characters don't say rather than what they do. They mentioned like in an interview that they didn't want to have like a generic, if a character is sad, then they'll frown. Another thing they actually like really focused on was the idea that if someone is sad, they might smile instead. They might try to hide it. And that's something you see a lot with Nozomi, especially. She has like a very, upbeat public face. She has so many friends. And she's always talking to someone, but it's always, surface level. It's never real friendship. And then you get to when she's with Mizore, and her face suddenly just changes. She gets this, like, look in her eyes. And it's like, there's definitely something deeper there, but also, does Nozomi know that it's something deeper? Does she know that, like, Mizore is so attached to Nozomi? That's something that comes up, like, basically every time they're together. You can just see sometimes Nozomi gets this look in her eyes, and then she goes back to her regular, usual smile.
Yeah, a real standout moment for me was when Nozomi leaves Mizore hanging for the I love you hug. The second time she does that, actually.
Yeah. She does it, like, twice.
Yeah, the second time she does it, she's just like, yeah, let's not do that right now, and just smiles and leaves, but you can tell, oh, she is not okay.
I saw that I was watching that scene, and then like I saw her when she asked for the hug. She's like, it's kind of feels subtle, but I think of like, are you mad at me?
Right.
Yeah, I went to Mad at You Island.
I went to Mad at You Island and nobody there knew you. Why were you at Mad at Me Island? As time goes on, we get like a bit more development in like their relationship because Mizore keeps getting tutored by Miss Niyama because, you know, they're practicing for playing the piece Liz and the Bluebird. And Nozomi isn't getting that same treatment. And she knows why, but she kind of just, you know, puts it in the back of her mind. She doesn't really want to think about it. And also, Ririka starts to open up more to Mizore. They start talking a bit more.
An egg.
Yeah, she talks to Nozomi. She's like, I don't really think Mizore likes talking to me. Do you think she hates me?
Is she mad at me?
Yeah.
So eventually, they have auditions for the piece Liz and the Bluebird. And obviously, Mizore and Nozomi get the oboe and the flute solo, which is a big important part of the third movement of the piece, which is called The Things We Do for Love. Very subtle. And it concerns the part of the story where the Bluebird has to fly away from Liz. And we see that in a bit more detail because eventually Nozomi and Mizore kind of talk to their friends, and Mizore talks to Miss Niyama about it. And they kind of come to the conclusion that, like, okay, so Mizore thinks Liz is like her, and even Nozomi kind of thinks that way, that she's the Bluebird, and Nozomi is the Bluebird, and Mizore is Liz. But they kind of realize that it might actually be the other way around, because it turns out in the story, Liz lets the Bluebird go because she thinks she's weighing the Bluebird down, that she needs to be flying free as a bird rather than staying locked up in a cage as a human. And even though the Bluebird doesn't want to leave, she basically hugs Liz and is like, being with you is everything I want to do. Liz is like, I'm a cage. You need to fly free. And she holds her hand out with the door open and lets the Bluebird step outside and open her wings and fly away. And as she looks at the Bluebird flying away, Liz thinks, Dear God, why did you show me how to free her from the cage? And it cuts to Nozomi, and she's thinking the exact same thing, looking over the sunset from the school courtyard.
God, it's such a good moment.
It's very somber and sad, but it's very crucial to their perspective.
Nozomi needs to learn how to let Mizore go free and pursue,
Yeah.
and Mizore needs to stop holding on to Nozomi so much, kind of figure out that she's her own person. And talking to Ririka helps her with that too, because when Ririka is upset that she doesn't get the part for Liz and the Bluebird, Mizore comforts her, and eventually they even go to the pool together. They start doing things as friends, when normally Mizore would probably only ask Nozomi to do that.
It's very touching seeing the relationship between Ririka and Mizore develop, because at one point Mizore outright says that the reason she hasn't been reciprocating Ririka's friendship is that she doesn't think that she'd be any fun to hang out with or be a good friend.
Right. Nozomi even says that she's just so introverted and so shy. She doesn't think so highly of herself that she doesn't really open up to anyone on her own volition. Nozomi was the only person to reach out to her and, actively invite her to join her in doing things. That's the only reason she's in the band at all. It feels like that's the entire reason she's even so good at the oboe is because Nozomi pushed her into doing it. So to see her making an effort to include other people and, finally branch out and make friends of her own, that's a sign of her spreading her wings.
Mizore might need to be pried open like an oyster emotionally, but once she gets there, it's very sweet.
Eventually, the two of them kind of come to that mutual understanding. They don't actually speak to each other about it. They just kind of separately are both like, oh, okay. Mizore needs to fly free. So at the next band rehearsal practice, they decide to practice the third movement of Liz and the Bluebird. And on the count of 3, we get this whole sequence of them playing their instruments, the solo of the oboe and the flute. And it's just the interrupted song for 5 minutes or something. And it's some of the most beautiful animation I've ever seen.
It's gorgeous.
They just put so much detail into drawing the instruments and the lighting on them, and everyone's in sync with the music, and they play perfectly.
And you could just see the emotion within Nozomi nearly bursting out.
And after the performance, Nozomi is gone. Everyone's congratulating Mizore on such a beautiful performance, but Mizore only wants to know where Nozomi is. And Nozomi has tear stains around her eyes, and she's just sitting there, quiet. And Mizore walks in, and they start to talk. Nozomi says, "I've never been as good as you. I never will be. It was selfish of me to think that I could ever be as good as you." Mizore says, "You're wrong. You're everything to me." And Nozomi just can't fathom that. She wants Mizore to lead her own life, to stop thinking about Nozomi. Mizore thinks Nozomi is selfish for thinking of herself like that, for not considering Mizore's feelings, for abandoning her more than once. And Nozomi just doesn't see it. So Mizore opens her arms and just rushes forward in the love you hug.
Finally.
3rd time's the charm. And Mizore hugs Nozomi. Mizore starts talking about everything she loves about Nozomi. Her voice, her hair, her footsteps, the way she talks, the way she makes the test tubes blow up, the way she pushes the big red buttons.
And then Nozomi says, "I love the way you're so vindictive about getting all the cards in the level."
Please.
All Nozomi can say in return is, "I love the way you play the oboe." And the two of them look at each other and just sit there. And then Nozomi starts laughing. She just keeps laughing. She can't stop. And then she finally looks up and says, "Thank you, Mizore. I need to get going now." And she pats her on the shoulder and just heads out. But while she's walking away, we see her thoughts, and she's thinking about the first time she met Mizore when they were going to join the band together, and Mizore was all alone and had no friends. And she realizes that Mizore has finally come out on her own, released from her cage.
It's so sweet. Such a perfect sort of ending for their character development.
It is. And the last scene of that movie is basically full circle to the first scene. We see Mizore walking to school, getting ready to play, practicing her oboe. And meanwhile, Nozomi isn't there with her. Nozomi is at the library checking out books for her graduation exams. She's focusing on her schoolwork. And as they leave school that day, finally, outside the school for the first time since the first scene. They meet up, but the screen fades out, and we see the text disjoint, and the first 3 letters are scratched out, and all I can say now is joint.
They're finally joined.
Oh my god, it makes sense now.
It all comes together. And that's how the movie ends.
Very sweet. Now go and watch the movie and report back to us on all the Yuri themes.
Yeah. We need that report.
Yeah, I want it on my desk by next Friday. So everyone, go and watch it.
Yeah, go watch it.
But finish the rest of the episode first.
Yes.
Yeah, because we got another thing to talk about.
Yes, we do. But I wanted to mention, Liz and the Bluebird also has a soundtrack album. It's called Girls Dance Staircase, with a comma between each word. What's interesting about that is not only does it have a lot of unused tracks from the movie, which is uncommon because normally soundtracks aren't composed after, the movie is set in place. So it's interesting that it has unused tracks on it, but also it has like a full, 4-movement suite for Liz and the Bluebird. It has it's like 20 minutes or something, and they only play like 5 minutes of it in the movie. You can listen to the full shebang of Liz and the Bluebird.
Like, go on down and listen and the Bluebirds, this soundtrack.
Yeah.
Oh, you think of a better one, Kels.
Oh, I couldn't. It's not gonna happen.
We're not going to top that. Let's cut the episode there.
But wait, we gotta talk about another bird. So I recently went back in time to the early years of YouTube, but not early enough for it to be just a weirdo landscape. Or maybe it did. I saw this anime, and it's called Sparkle on Raven, The Adventures of a DrillGirl.
Sparkle on Raven, The Life of Joe Girl.
Damn it, I got it wrong! Ah!
Sparkle on Raven, The Life of Joe Girl, starring Joe Girl. So this is the story of a high school girl named Raven. And Raven is not a good student, but she's entering her 3rd year, and it's going to be tough because she has a night job as a magical girl. But luckily, she has her friends to help her, like the main character, Jill Girl.
Oh, thank goodness for that.
She's in every episode. She does things. She exists. And she also has her friends, Berry Cream Frosting and Darkshi. So the reason we bring this up is that Sparkle on Raven is in fact a Yuri.
Really? It's a Yuri? Who would have thought?
How so?
Although it isn't really the main focus. There are a lot of gay people working on Sparkle on Raven.
Really?
Let's talk about.
Okay, wait. No, hold on. Can we just go back in time a little bit? Can you explain, I guess, the medium of Sparkle on Raven?
Right, okay. Sparkle on Raven is a fanime, which is like fan-made anime that's like made in MS Paint and Windows Movie Maker. It looks like it came from 2008, and it like has the aesthetic of that. But the whole deal of it is that it doesn't make fun of itself for having such poor production values. It kind of just lets itself exist.
It's like pretty much emulating that era of like fan animation on YouTube where people just like really love like anime and magical anime and wanted to like make their own and use the limited resources they have. And it's pretty much bringing back that. It's pretty much using that aesthetic. Yeah.
It's embracing the amateur nature of it, just that anyone can do this. Anyone can use the tools they have to make something. And that's really special, I think.
Now, who's the studio that made this?
So the studio that made it is called These Are Videos 123, or TAS 123. And it's headed by a bunch of people who worked on the real-time fan dubs, like Sonic 06 and Shadow the Hedgehog and all that. And so you have a lot of like familiar voice actors from those. Like Raven is voiced by Dollop, who voiced Jet in Sonic Riders. And then you also have Pachinko Moment. She's voiced by Penny Parker.
Yes, I want to talk about it. It's such a funny. Okay, so let me explain. Pachinko Moment. Pachinko Moment is the one of the latest episode of Sparkle on Raven. So it's about Berry Cream, who lost her ability to transform into a human because she's missing the object that lets her transform into a human.
Is she not usually a human?
Yes, she's a bunny. She's a marketable little mascot bunny.
So is she Sparkle and Raven's like Precure fairy?
No. So the Pachinko Moment. So there is this club called the Pachinko Club.
Yeah, and they go
Yeah.
to the pachinko machine where they can collect the prize, but it turns out the prizes are actually just confiscated items from the Lost and Found. And one of the
Yeah.
items is Berry Cream's bell that lets her turn into a human because it went to the Lost and Found and got confiscated.
Now, who's also working in the Lost and Found?
That's right. It's Dawn, voiced by Penny. And she's just kind of this fumbly little nerd who keeps, tripping over her own feet. And she wears this oversized sweater. And she's just like, oh, hi.
Yeah. I like the funny fact that, like, essentially, Dollop is voicing the main girl Raven, and Don, who's voicing Penny, is a character that has a crush on her. And so it's just like a funny tidbit. And it's like, oh yeah, they're voiced by like two lesbians who are actually dating IRL.
Yeah. Like, Raven turns into a magical girl, and she goes up to the Chico machine. She goes up to Dawn. She's like, "Tell me." And Dawn's like, Pachinko Moment. She's like blushing furiously. She doesn't even know what to do.
It's like, and Raven is like, okay.
And that's the story. I'm not going to spoil
Yeah.
the rest of it.
So what I'm understanding is that you would recommend Sparkle and Raven for people who like comedy web series with a side of Yuri.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And who doesn't like comedy web series with a side of Yuri?
It's so critical.
Even Yaoi should have a side of Yuri.
Absolutely.
Yaoi and Yuri hand in hand.
It's like the little two ocelopods like sharing the wine in the picture.
Yes.
Great conclusion. Thank you.
Now, everyone, we hope to see you next time in another episode of Café Lily.
Yes, Erika, thank you for coming on. Where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at @starpunch_. And that's it, actually.
Unless, of course, we start seeing you in the cafe more using the internet to update the wikis and TV tropes.
So true. But then again, this isn't an internet cafe. It's a Yuri cafe.
I mean, how else were we gonna get to reach the Yuri? Thank you so much. See y'all next time.